dia yiv, may God bless you. Mana banacha, meaning blessing. Gomana dia yiv, may God bless you all. And it's kind of saying welcome. Welcome is another way. Asquelga. Gach ina tá beagani gwelga le fáil go van seo. Every Friday we do just a little bit of extra Irish there. It's nice to have a sort of Irish flavour. Nice to hear from Terry yesterday was saying he enjoyed, I think it might have been his first time hearing Ceolalagus Crack, but he enjoyed the banter and the music and thought, yep, that fits nicely. That's kind of our faith, our heritage, our identity. And I suppose as Radio Ireland it wouldn't do, but it would have to have some strong Irishness about it too. And so I hope you were able to pick up and catch a few of the words in Irish. Most of us have a schmatterin that we can kind of pick up bits and pieces here and there. And with a small bit of practice, it's amazing how it'll come back to the surface and you'll be able to recognize it once more. So now Father Eamonn McCarthy is my name on Tachar. Eamonn McCarthy is Anamdom as Corkig. So here with Radio Maria Ireland this past 4 years now. And welcome to anybody who's new or who's just dropping in or clicking on it and saying hello. And nice to have you with us, especially on YouTube and on Facebook as well. Do please drop a little like and a comment down below if you wish. And like and share and follow and subscribe. All these things are helpful. And they're just easy ways of evangelizing and letting our footprint grow a little bit more on the internet in cyberspace, that others might happen across this resource too, and maybe share it and maybe draw or learn or get some little moment of grace or inspiration, and certainly prayer as well. That's our role, our missionary role here as a radio station. And I wonder, is it kind of missionary light? I kind of hope it's not too L-I-T-E. The plan really is that it's ongoing, and that in time that faith that we share together will deepen and broaden and become a journey of fellowship together, like any good Christian community, like any monastic community, like any family. You want the relationship to grow, you want it to be healed, you want to be able to see that this gift that we have received and that we share, that we can pass on to others. And again, like the lesson of the gospel today, that our treasure is in heaven, that we don't just keep our eyes just on the horizon of this world, but that it's an eternal horizon which lifts the mind and lifts the heart a little bit more to see God's plan or God's hand at work in all things. Even if it doesn't make it, a whole lot of sense at the time. We might be going through some trial or some difficulty or some obscurity, but that in faith we can see our way through it. Tara put a nice little story in front of me here. I might share it with you. Lessons for Father's Day. And I presume it's Father's Day somewhere. I'm not sure where the date is coming from. But the church teaches, the story goes, that as it's written here, that parents are the primary educators of the faith. I have to be honest, the writer says here, that made me uncomfortable. Yes, my parents took me to Mass and taught me prayers at a young age, but my Catholic school lay teachers, as well as priests and sisters, took over the meat and potatoes of Catholicism at school. I don't think my parents were alone in thinking there was always someone more qualified to teach us about the faith than them. And we've seen that in Ireland in the past, certainly, where parents are inclined to perhaps leave the religious formation of their children, perhaps to the school more than taking on the responsibility themselves. And it should be the other way around, not just in religious formation, but every aspect of a child's formation really belongs primarily to parents. All my life, my father didn't participate sacramentally in the life of the church. He went to Mass faithfully, but when it came to receive the Holy Eucharist, he didn't go with his family, and he didn't receive the sacrament of reconciliation. The two were tied at the hip, and he was a pew sitter. Excuse me. And that's always a shame to see, there's faith there, there's practice there, maybe prayer there, but there's a blockage of some kind to be able to receive the sacraments. And how to overcome that. Grace needs to somehow find its way in. You know, I meet that so often in parishes. You know, good people, and lovely to chat with, and good family men and family women, and yet some little blockage. Dad had one best friend, the grudge. He didn't speak with his brother for nearly 30 years, and he cut out many of his other family members. Eventually, the same fate befell my siblings and me. That's very sad. Obviously, some element of pride, something, again, a blockage, as I say. After nearly 15 years of not hearing from Dad, we received a call from our uncle. Excuse me. He reconnected with Dad largely through phone calls over the intervening years. And in late 2019, Dad had gotten sick, and in January 2020, he was told he had terminal leukemia, common amongst Vietnam War veterans. Actually, there's a clue, isn't it, that the Vietnam War, any man who went through war like that, there's a lot of PTSD, isn't it? It's a post-traumatic, PTSD is a post-traumatic stress disorder. That can be quite a block. My uncle said if ever there was time to make peace with Dad, this was it. We didn't tell Dad we were visiting him in the hospital, we just went. I had an anxiety attack in the hospital lobby. I was scared to face his judgment and rejection. Eventually, with the love and encouragement of family, I made it upstairs and took a deep breath as I walked through his door. He recognized his sister right away, but took a minute to register my face, given the years and weight I'd put on. He looked into my eyes and he said, "Hey, Matt." He then acted like we'd just seen one another a few days prior. The past didn't matter, he just cared that I was there. Later, Dad said a priest came to visit and that he was offered the sacrament of reconciliation. And after decades of holding back, he overcame his pride. He shared with the priest a lifetime that had weighed on his conscience. It all came pouring out, Dad said, as tears rolled down his bearded cheeks. I was so scared, but he just listened to me and didn't judge me. Things used to be so harsh. I think things are changing. I really do. It felt good. It really did. And that's really my sales pitch for confession always, you know, that try to overcome the human barrier, to take the step. In that moment, it was Dad who was my primary educator in the faith, reminding me of the overwhelming mercy available in the sacrament of reconciliation. He died a week later with my sister and me by his side. He could barely get words out, but prayed along with the priest who anointed him in his final hours. Dad's role as a catechist was one he passed over for much of his life, but his final sacramental journey was one of the greatest educations I have ever received in Catholicism. It's very beautiful. Looking into the eyes of the youngest of our 3 children, Martin, we are reminded how much he has to learn about the world, and most importantly, his faith and the mission it gives him. What I need to admit is that my own faith education is incomplete. It's a lifetime journey, and being a father reminds me that there are always questions, often repeated multiple times in one sitting, that need answering. Thanks to the lessons of my father, I know my role better than ever. I'm a Catholic, I'm a dad, and a catechist. I wouldn't have it any other way. There's a lovely story now indeed. That was just beginning of last year now, when that poor man indeed went to his reward, but not without first receiving the sacrament of reconciliation. Excuse me. Excuse me again. No, the frog is back. He won't go away. He'll come up eventually. Excuse me. So isn't that a lovely lesson, and just teaches us something about our mission in the world? And you know why I'm at pains these Chatechesis mornings to express how, you know, we might have a false notion of being a missionary as something out there, or some far off place that we have to go to, or some pulpit or soapbox or something we have to stand up and make a stand and be counted on. It's none of those things really. It's deeper than that. It's more important than that in so many ways. Again, like Saint Therese of Lisieux, she didn't go on any mission anywhere. She simply lived inside the four walls of her convent, a community in Lisieux, and now patroness of the missions. But like this young man here and his father, we're called to be missionary in our own context, in our own home, in our own family, in our own surroundings. So whether you're at work, whether you're in the car, whether you're at home, it doesn't matter. That there is the place to be missionary, and not necessarily overtly preaching the gospel in people's faces. That's, again, we might have a false idea that that's what you have to be doing all the time. That's not the case. You can simply be having a conversation like we're having right now and sharing with people, having Radio Maria on in the background, who was with us there recently, Mary. She has it on in the kitchen, and the children pass through, or grown-up children now. And who knows what little moment, what word again, what might touch, that as we're living this faith, you see. And how extraordinary that man would, avail of the priest, and fair play to the priest for going around the hospital and offering confession. Something must have triggered that. Somebody perhaps was praying on his behalf. Somebody was making sacrifices on his behalf. Something touched, something resonated. Perhaps his faithfulness to the Mass, even though, as was put, he was tied to the pew. It gives us hope, really hope for everyone. I have to admit, though, and point out that that kind of story is relatively rare. Certainly I would try to make it less rare insofar as to be able to minister to people in hospital or so on, and to grant them the opportunity of the sacraments when they need it. But, in a hospital context, or, a near-death type experience, it's not everyone who can avail of that, or, bring that around. When my uncle was dying, actually, a couple of years ago now, and he had been given 6 months, I did say to him, whether he might like the services of a priest, and did my little part to try to encourage it, and was told indeed that he availed of the sacraments in the hospital, which is good. Glad the priest, again, the hospital came around and just made sure to, because he might not necessarily want to talk to his nephew, which is fine, or you might want to talk to your brother or your whatever. It's a difficult one with a close family member. But when somebody stranger can come in, then there's a kind of a freedom there. So never give up hope. Maybe there's a little lesson there as well. Never give hope on our dear relatives and friends. It may have to be, somewhere near the end, or some crisis may have to hit, or some moment of grace. And God can be allowed room to maneuver and win that soul over. Sometimes we might even see the effect of it. We just don't know. God might not allow us to see the fruit of our prayers or sacrifices on behalf of others. It might have to wait till the life to come. Who knows, though, what good may always come of these things. So never give up hope on anyone, and always, and what's that expression again? Preach the gospel always, and use words if necessary. So keep faithful. Don't lose heart if your siblings or your family members, your children, or your parents, or those who are close and near and dear to you seem to be at odds. You simply keep faithful. Keep living your faith. Do the small things, do the ordinary things well. Try to grow in love and in patience and in self-sacrifice. Be there for them. Try not to judge. Always difficult. Try not to moan and to give out. That's a tough one too. But to show the greatest charity as best you can. And what that does, what that affects in the long run, is like attrition. It kind of wears the person down. I told you that story. The lady I know, who was married for years, and her husband was not great, I think was the impression I got. Not sort of really pulling the weight or making the effort, or, seemed to be wanting in some way. So she set herself, not to be a doormat now or anything like that, but to really attend to her own duty and her own task as wife and mother, and sought to serve his needs and provide and so on, play her role nobly and graciously, but again without being, being used or abused. That would be a wrong approach too. And in the end, he noticed. Now, it's not as if he never noticed, but he finally articulated, said it, and asked and wondered, why is it, or what is it? And he kind of was able to admit that he was grumpy and that he was hard to live with and so on. And yet she was so charitable to him. And she simply opened his heart, or warmed his heart again to come back around. Again, that's a lovely grace to receive. And I'm sure she went through many a tough day, having to bite the lip or, put up and try not to overreact, try not to get angry, try not to clench the fist or slam the door or throw a frying pan or a rolling pin or all these other things, or a hissy fit or the silent treatment, or all those other things that we do when we're, frustrated. It's an expression of frustration and anger, perhaps with others, with neglect or with indifference, that can be very hurtful when it's somebody so close. So it's not easy to smile our way through these things. And yet again, St. Therese of Lisieux, this was one of her characteristics. She was put in charge of one of the most awkward and difficult and tough sisters in the community. And she set herself, a bit like that other story, she set herself to minister to this elderly nun, and was ever smiling and ever gracious, and sought to see and serve Christ in her sister. Excuse me, where all the other sisters had kind of given up hope and had just been frustrated and were finding it just hard going. She, again in time, won over this sister's heart to repentance. And whatever was troubling her, and no doubt it was something maybe from the past, maybe some baggage, some blockage again, she had been hurt or wounded by some misfortune, or I don't know what, maybe that's actually written in the book. I'm not sure if out of charity, I'm sure St. Therese might not have put that in the story of his soul. But at any rate, this elderly sister, in the end wanted no one else but Therese to look after her. And, died a holy death in the end too. So the power of mercy, the power of forgiveness, the power of grace, which we can become instruments of through our own forbearance, our own charity, our own tolerance, understood correctly, not to tolerate misbehavior. That's what I'm saying. No one's asked to be a doormat or to be a punch bag for others, but to be charitably tolerant, never tolerant or condoning what is ill or evil or wrong, simply. If you're an alcoholic husband, for instance, no way should we be condoning the abuse of alcohol, nor putting up with abusive behavior as a result of alcohol addiction, but certainly showing every compassion otherwise and charity otherwise to try to bring healing to the situation. It doesn't do to lock people out or to block people off. It may be for safety, though. This is what I mean about the not allowing ourselves to be abused, that for safety, for good proportionate reason, to have to keep a certain distance or to have some safeguards in place. That would be always a very necessary consideration, and to have lots of support and backup in that type of situation too. Again, drug addiction is another, can be a risky one. Again, if there's mental disturbance or illness that can make a person violent sometimes. Again, we don't have to be the punch bag or at the receiving end of that. We do have to be very mindful of. Common sense will hopefully teach us that. And that's where support from others will help. And that's where we then, as fellow Christians and as fellow Catholics, can come alongside and befriend people with great troubles like that. And even just to give people a little bit of our time over the phone, or just hearing them speak about their woes or their ills, and just accompanying them a little bit on their sorrowful way. If it is, for instance, somebody has a really troublesome life at home or in the workplace, just to sit and listen for a bit, And again, gets a little bit tricky if it becomes a kind of a codependency situation. That again, there's always, that little human element that can be a little bit tricky to negotiate. So that's where a good bit of direction and support that we all need help us just to journey through those difficulties. But if it is we're not doing that, or there's kind of a selfishness there, or a sort of, it's what about me all the time. That's not healthy for us. The idea of giving away of our time and our listening ear, that's a very noble thing to do. It's something you can't be given back. But that's a way, as the gospel teaches us this morning, of storing up treasure in heaven. All that comes back to us in spades. The Lord sees that the things get done that need to get done when we are exercising the charity that we ought to do towards, especially towards those in need. And if it is that we enjoy health of mind or body or spirit, if it is we enjoy wealth, or we enjoy prosperity, we enjoy other gifts and talents of mind or body and spirit, they are best employed by actually putting them to use. Again, the parable of the talents. You know, you bury the talent and you get nothing back. Whereas if you invest the talent, here's where the treasure comes in, and we give of those resources generously in the service of others, and particularly out of love for God, that's where the 5 talents pay 5 more, or the 10 talents, 10 more back. And the guy with the 10 talents got the 1 talent the other guy buried because he was the most productive. You know, he's going to make good use of this 1 talent, and he's going to really, you know, there'll be a return of the investment here. So if you want to look at it in those kind of ways, that God has blessed us with so many gifts as well, and to make good use of them in the service of others, and we can help to bring healing and bring peace and bear fruit unto others as a treasure that will last into eternity. So saving up stuff here on earth and putting stuff aside and investing in all these things, well, you know, we might put that to good use for the poor after we're gone, leave it to some worthy cause. That's not a bad idea. In fact, if you want to put Radio Maria in there as one of your benefactors, please give that a little consideration. If you would, certainly look, if you're preparing a will or doing any of these things, look after your own needs and those of your family. First and foremost, always, these things are very, very important. But if there's a little room left to consider something like Radio Maria and other great noble charities, don't miss that opportunity either when you're putting that document together, and to make it as easy as you can for those coming afterwards, so that they have a real legacy. But that little story is that's a beautiful legacy there. That young son, who in reconciliation, well, he wasn't so young, I suppose. He had children of his own, but his father left him with a lovely parting gift. That he was a catechist to him. That he had taught his son, you know, the power of reconciliation, and that even though he hadn't done that well in bringing his son up in the faith, all the same he'd gone to Mass. There's actually an interesting statistic or little observation, you know, that if the dad in the home practices the faith, mums, you know, Irish mums certainly, I think by and large would be very good women of faith in the heart of the home. But the best way to secure the future practice of your child, it's said, is if the dad practices his faith. There's a better assurance that that child would stay with the faith thereafter. And I wonder, is it to do with the idea of fatherhood and God as Father? That if the dad, even with his own limitations or weaknesses or, you know, whatever it is, but if he makes the effort to go to Mass, and it's certainly true of my own home, I don't know there's any great overt kind of religiosity there as such, but certainly conviction and certainly faith and certainly steadfastness, and it was just part of the drill. There was no questions asked. You polished your shoes, you brushed your hair when you still had hair, and out to Mass every Sunday. And it was just part and parcel of what we did, and Dad did too. And so when that, apparently that's part of the household, it augurs well for the children. So maybe in that little instance there, because his dad had continued faithfully to go to Mass, here he was coming back around himself too. Interesting. Very good. Shall we pause for a little piece of music, and an instrumental piece now, Fumli. Again, I was tracked down and get hold of the new CD that they have released. I was looking for the one of the new tracks they've produced is online somewhere, and I listened to it the other day. But we'll get hold of that, we'll play that for you. So a little instrumental piece. This is Ronan McDonough. He plays the uilleann pipes. It's called Sula an Chullum. And it's a beautiful piece, ideal for an offertory. We used to use it often in the seminary too. and in parish is an offertory piece. So do please get in touch, drop a comment, drop a like, maybe a thought or reflection in reaction just to that little bit of Chatechesis there now. And maybe you've had an experience, maybe you can tell a little story or share a little of your own journey in that too, and help us all along with that. So the number is always 089 467 2000. Text and WhatsApp, just put it into your phone and keep it there as a contact, and you can drop us a text anytime then. +353 89 467 2000. And you can telephone, of course. Mary will answer the phone downstairs this morning, 014 123 456. Very easy to remember. Annoy the Hain, Cahar Hain Do Tree Cahar Cuig She. They're all the numbers you remember from your school Irish too. +353 again 14 123 456. Email info@radiomaria.ie. And if you'd like to write to us, you might be listening back to this and might like to put pen to paper. And then the address here is very simple as well. St. Anthony's Business Park, Ballymount Road, Dublin 22. Very easy address, just across from the Red Cow Hotel. I'd say if you put Radio Maria Dublin 22, it will probably find us. Or Radio Maria opposite the Red Cow, it will probably find us. You know how we are in Ireland with our addresses. Now a little musical interlude, Sula and Cholam. Thanks, Catherine, for that. Anyway, thank you. Go on for the crack. There you go. That's Shane's best jingle there for me. Sula and Cholam there is the name of that lovely piece. Beautiful Irish melody there. And the uilleann pipes he's gifted. And he's probably playing the two instruments, the organ as well, Ronan McDonough. But they've produced a new CD, Foom Lee, At the End of the Sky, it's called. And really looking forward to sharing that with you as well. So shout out, thanks to everybody tuning in and listening in there and following on Facebook Live as well. And if you just scroll your way back through Facebook as well, you see the Gospel and Homily. We try to put that when the camera doesn't play up or when the, the social media doesn't kick back. We put that up on video as well. And you can watch these things back later in your own time without any bother. Any time that suits us is great. So shout out to Maria, thanks to Paula and to George Marion it says there, and Eileen and Moira as well, all listening in and checking in with us on Facebook. Thanks for sharing with us and being a part of the radio here. Nice to be part of the conversation. Again, if you have any thoughts or maybe questions too on the related topics here or something that comes to mind by way of maybe exploring a little further, please do share it with us and let us know. Now I'm going to move on to another chapter and just a little bit. Again, it's very light, L-I-T-E, or L-I-G-H-T really. L-I-T-E seems like it's a bit frivolous or we don't take it too seriously, but we do. But just to explore it in a nice easygoing way, let's say, Ad Gentes, the second chapter of Ad Gentes, which is on mission work itself. And we cover the first chapter, which was some of the principles there of the mission of the church, and this is let me see just how many chapters we've got. We've got a conclusion there, paragraph 42. So with the first 9 paragraphs done, there's only 42 paragraphs altogether. Some of them a bit longer than others. Yeah, I see there's 6. It's broken into 6 chapters. So the documents themselves, the book looks quite intimidating when I hold up to the camera there. It looks like a real brick and it is that too. It would kind of hold the door open for it if you had no other use for it. But just the content of it, and if you take it in small little bites, the Vatican documents really are most extraordinary. And it's true of any church documents like that are produced. They bear the fruit, or there's something worthwhile about just sitting with them and dwelling with them. If you're a person who likes to just spend a little time in prayer each day, maybe adoration, a little piece of something like this would be great food for the soul and the mind and the spirit, because what you're dealing with here is the magisterium of the church, that is the church's teaching, authorized and inspired by the Holy Spirit, just to help us nurture our faith and again to feed it. So, if I feed myself with junk food, where that leads. And likewise the soul and the spirit, and it might be like broccoli and spinach at times. It's like, do I have to? Really? But in smaller proportion, take a small bite. It's amazing how we can develop a little taste and a little capacity for this theology is what it is really. And the teaching of the church can be profound at times, and that's why you can't just read a book like this from cover to cover. You take it in small portions, and I'm happy to kind of distill it and open it out for you. Maybe you have a document or maybe a teaching that I might be able to explore a little bit more with this suggestion as well. So this is the second chapter now of Ad Gentes, and the 2 Latin words, of course, that's from the title of the first line of the encyclical. Gentes, or gentlemen, is a word for people. Gentes, ad will be towards, so ad gentes, to the people. And so we've learned how the principle is very simple. God himself, Father, Son, and Spirit, is mission, is missionary, in the begetting of the Son and the sending of the Son to return to the Father. That's a missionary movement right there. So the Lord, in returning to the Father at the Ascension, said, okay, now your turn. Go out to the whole world, baptize all nations. And so the church in and of itself, and we are the church, we are members of the church. The church is made up of living people. We, in the same way, are identified by our mission. Now, remember how I said at the beginning of the show that mission isn't, again, scrap the idea of going off to China or Japan or wherever it might be. we have that in our psyche, I suppose, in Ireland. We're just such a missionary country. It's amazing. And instead embrace the idea of being a missionary here at home. That's really what I'm a big fan of the Legion of Mary, the centenary of the Legion this year. It just, as was it Pope Paul VI said, it knows how to use the little people, that ordinary wonderful souls who are baptized and just have that prayer life and zeal and want to tell others about their faith. They join something like the Legion of Mary. It could be any other good faith-filled organization, but provided there's an apostolic element to it, it actually does amazing things for your faith, and it helps you to become articulate and fearless in speaking about your faith. And it's a great way, in giving your faith away, you get it back in spades. So, and you can do that locally. We've started our own Presidium here now in Radio Maria, and we agreed on the title of our Presidium. Queen of Radio Maria is the title of our Presidium. And our Legion work each week, we'll meet each week, and our work each week, the work assignment, will be the promotion of Radio Maria in whatever shape, size or form that takes. And like that, week on week, we do a couple of hours work, and bingo, you're already a missionary. And you know how these great figures that we pray for here, Alfie Lamb, Edel Quinn, Frank Duff himself, they were ordinary lay people, but heroic in their missionary work. Edel to Africa, Alfie to Latin America, and Frank here within a couple of square miles of Dublin, and yet reaching the ends of the earth. Extraordinary. So here's what the document continues with now, just a little sample. Again, the Church, which has been sent by Christ to reveal and communicate the love of God to all, is aware that for her a tremendous missionary work still remains to be done. The harvest is rich, the labourers are few. And you know my nice little Duffian phrase too, sleeve, Catholicism with its sleeves rolled up, active in some way. There are 2 billion people, and their number is increasing day by day. Wow, 2 billion, that's of course 1965. There's 7 billion there now, as far as I know. Man, did the population increase that much in that short space of time? Oh, sorry, no. I didn't read the rest of the sentence. Sorry. There are 2 billion people, and their number is increasing day by day, who have never or barely heard the gospel message. So I think they're probably referring to the likes of China and India, Asia. There certainly are, there's over 2 billion, certainly. I think there's 2 billion in India and 1 billion and something in China. So it could be 3 billion or more who have never or barely heard the gospel message. They constitute large and distinct groups united by enduring cultural ties, ancient religious traditions, well that would be the Chinese for sure, and strong social relationships. Again, India and China fit that description there. Of these, some belong to one or other of the great religions. Now what they're suggesting there is Buddhism or Hinduism in that context. Others have no knowledge of God, while others expressly deny the existence of God and sometimes even attack it. If the Church is to be in a position to offer all of these people the mystery of salvation and the life brought by God, then it must implant itself among all these groups in the same way that Christ, by his incarnation, committed himself to the particular social and cultural circumstances of the people among whom he lived, by coming obviously to Israel. And so our task is the very same, to plant ourselves where we can witness to the gospel. Now here on the internet, and kind of a reluctant journey for me to finally make it onto video as well, but it's heading out into the unknown a little bit. It's out into the deep where any and every, it's the Areopagus, isn't it, of Athens that St. Paul visited, and the altar to the unknown God. You throw yourself out into it and you take what comes, and for the most part it might just be curiosity, it might be indifference, but who knows what souls might well be reached or touched. So we put ourselves out there and enter into it. So that's paragraph 10 completed there. We'll come back to that again for our next Chatechesis, and I see my time has just gone from me completely. So thank you so much for being part of the Chatechesis today. We have to leave it there. And we'll listen now to our Angelus bells and return for our midday prayer as well.